Renee, you are a woman who has taken destiny into her own hands as the first former player to become both an owner and executive of the WNBA.
What is up, Hardcore Nation? It's Hardcore Christopher here, and today we're gonna go through Flash Duel, Chapter 4. Now, in Chapter 3, Jack, with the help of Dark Magician Girl, did become friends with monsters in his deck. He also summoned Dark Magician, and Dark Magician Girl healed his injury. His third degree burns because Obelisk doesn't like Jack at all. And then Jack proceeds to get a stern talking to by Dark Magician. Jack, instead of listening, because Dark Magician told Jack to send Dark Magician Girl home, and all Jack did was remove the card, which was removing Dark Magician from this plane of reality. So, with that being said, let's get into Chapter 4. Jack Harper was taking a shower so unbearably cold that it felt like he'd fallen through a patch of Arctic ice. He was taking the frigid washing because he was trying to stop himself from sweating. He knew he had to calm down. He had to relax. But his anxiety was taking hold of him. Get a hold of yourself, Harper, Jack thought to himself. You've been spending time with Mana for 3 months now. You know what she likes and you know what she dislikes. Just because it's taken you all this time to work up the nerve to ask her out, and you and she are going on your first official date is no reason. I said please stop. On your first official date is no reason to panic. I'm just going to ignore the notification sounds. You've tempered some of the most dangerous... Wait. Yeah, that's tempered. Some of the most dangerous dragons there are survived the rage of an Egyptian god monster. You can handle a date with the girl you're crazy about, except that a date is by nature different from spending time together as friends, and this is the first date of your entire life. And if you mess it up, she might not want to be around you anymore. Jack stopped washing himself as that thought began to cement itself in his mind. Before it could obliterate every ounce of courage he possessed, Jack shook his head violently to clear his mind. Stop that, you idiot. You keep thinking like that, you'll end up on the floor in the fetal position before you make it out of the bathroom. Just try to act like you normally do with her and a little more, and you should be fine. He finished washing, got out, and dried himself off using several towels and a copious amount of rubbing and friction to get rid of his goose flesh. Moving back into his bedroom, Jack looked down at the outfit he'd gotten for the date. He'd gone to a local tailor 2 weeks later, two weeks earlier, and had the woman make him a suit based on the most savant, savvy and sophisticated person Jack could think of, the English super spy, James Bond. The suit, which had been made, was a grey wool three-piece suit in the British style, with a high quality white button up to wear underneath the jacket and vest. He had not bought a tie to go with it, partially because he thought that would look like he was trying too hard, but mostly because he'd never tied or worn a tie in his life, and he was fairly certain trying to then would turn into a battle he'd be doomed to lose. As he dressed, Jack's mind wandered into the vacant apartment adjacent to his. Since he only had one bathroom, and Mana insisted that they shouldn't see each other in their date outfits until they were ready to go, she had used her magic to unlock the door to the next apartment, so she could use it to ready herself. It was technically breaking and entering, but they'd agreed it was a victimless crime of minuscule enough intensity for them to live with. Jack finished buttoning up the vest, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw his dual disc with Mana's card on it, charging in the corner of the room. He thought for a moment about leaving the dual disc there, but due to the fact that his powers didn't work unless he played the cards on the disc, he decided it'd be better to take it. In case something happened while they were out, he didn't want to have to leave the conflict resolution solely to Mana. He was in no way a sexist, and in fact had nothing but respect for her powers and contemptness in a fight, but he didn't like the idea of Mana having no backup on the off chance something happened to them. I haven't scrolled all the way down, so the words were not very clear. Okay. Jack then put on his suit jacket, placed the dual disc on his left arm, adjusted the metal armband to a snug fit, put his main deck in the deck slot, and two more in the inside jacket pockets. It was then that the spirit image of Karibo appeared in front of him. "Well, Karibo, what do you think?" Jack asked, lifting his arms to show the whole image of himself in the suit. Karibo replied with his hooting sound. "Really, you think? It's not too over the top?" Jack didn't understand how, but the more that Karibo had appeared to him and spoken to him over the past few months, Jack had somehow come to know what the friendly little ball of fluff was saying through his hoots. It now almost sounded like English to Jack. Karibo squealed to him. "Thanks, pal. Let you know how it goes later on." The small dual monster then hooted again. "Don't say that. I'm nervous enough on my own without you bringing up that possibility." At that point, Jack left the apartment while walking the 20 feet to the next door. Jack steeled his mind once more. "Just take it easy, Jack. You're just going out for a good time with your best friend. Just keep thinking that." He reached the door and knocked on it softly. After a moment, he heard footsteps from the inside approach. The door opened, and Dark Magician Girl, the girl he'd come to know as Mana, was standing before him, smiling. She was a vision of incomparable beauty. Her golden blonde hair was in its regular style, flowing freely down her head and face, with several strands falling right between her eyes. Her emerald green eyes were accented with a slight metallic colored eyeshadow, which made them stand out wonderfully. And her lips had a very light amount of lipstick, which brought out their natural color. She was wearing a torch red satin dress, which ended halfway to her knees and displayed a tasteful and classy, yet still arousing amount of cleavage. On her feet were high heels that matched her dress, in color and added 3 inches to her height. For a long time, Jack just gaped at her, stunned silent. Finally, he mumbled, "Mana, you're wow," and "Wow." Mana gave a small giggle. It's a good thing. It's a good thing you're not a writer. Jack smiled in a self-deprecating way and laughed himself. I guess it is. You look pretty wow yourself. I've never seen you in a suit before. I like how it looks on you, and that dress is just incredible. I want to see you in red more often. I'm glad you like it. So, what are we doing tonight? Mama asked. Well, first we've got reservations at a little Italian restaurant I read about, and after that is a surprise. She smiled at that. Okay. Mana then stepped out into the hall, having seen the move done in movies. Jack lifted his arms and held it outwards for her to take. To his elation and relief, she knew what he was doing and hooked her own arm around his so that he could lead her as they walked. The dinner at the restaurant turned out to be an unimagined disaster. The restaurant had low lighting, which made both Jack and Mana think was less about atmosphere than trying to hide the filth they could see all around. The menu was limited to about 5 different meals, forcing the two of them to order basically the same meal. The breadsticks on the table were stale, the butter sauce for dipping was greasy and flavorless, and when he brought it, the waiter accidentally spilled ice water down Jack's back, making him jump and holler as if he were in a cartoon. Jack quietly swore to himself that if he ever found the person who had obviously faked the reviews of this place, he'd sick red eyes on them. The only good part of the entire meal was their conversation. They talked about many things, though throughout the meal, Mana told him more about her world of the dominion of the beasts. Jack told her about the cities he'd been to during the times he'd traveled to attend the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championships. After 40 minutes of smelling burning tomatoes and with their food less than half finished, both Jack and Mana un unemulously decided to get the hell out of there. As they left the restaurant, Jack said, "Mana, I cannot apologize enough for that. I swear that the reviews I saw for that place said it was incredible. It's all right, Jack. It's not your fault it wasn't as advertised, but I had this whole idea of what the dinner part would be like, and this is our first date, and ugh," Jack shouted lowly. He then took a breath and calmed himself. "Okay, it's not the end of the world. We can have something back at the apartment later, and we've still got the activity. This I've done before, so I can guarantee no unpleasant surprises. Let's go then." The two of them started to walk down the street together. As they walked, Mana moved closer, reached out, and wrapped her arm around his again, leaning into him a bit as she did. The rush of in, in, endorphins Jack's brain release from her touch made him feel as if he were floating down the street instead of walking. He always couldn't oh, he almost couldn't believe all of this was happening to him. 4 months ago, Jack would have counted himself as one of the top 10 loneliest sad sacks in the whole world. And now, Duel Monsters or not, he had friends and he was on a date with most gorgeous girl he'd ever met. In the back of his mind, he had a constant dread that he was going to wake up at any moment to find that it had all been a dream. But he managed to keep that fear at bay by focusing on the even more intense fear that he has going to mess up with Mana. "You know, Jack, this world of yours is quite interesting," Mana said, breaking him out of his thoughts. "How so?" he asked. "It's so different from my world and the other worlds I've seen. In my world, we don't have restaurants or television and movies or any of these other things you see as normal. It's strange. There's nothing really to complain about, but we don't really do anything. In a way, we merely exist in our world. We don't live. In my case, all I ever really do is study magic." Sounds like it could get boring. "It does," Mana said, "but like all things, it goes in and out of being boring." It was beginning to get Dull again until recently. Yeah? What happened? Mana looked up at Jack, sensing the movement of her head. Jack turned his and looked into her eyes. I met you, she said. Jack's heart instantly melted like an icicle in the desert, looking down at her so close, her lips and eyes both smiling. Jack couldn't help himself as he began to lean down. A sound before he could kiss her. The sound of breaking glass ruined the moment and caused the both of them to look up. They were standing in front of a bank. No alarm was ringing, but the front window was broken. A total of 5 men were climbing out of the window with duffel bags in all of their hands, obviously full of cash. They each had an assault rifle slung over over one shoulder. All 5 men stopped and stared, Jack and Mana staring right back in turn. The man, who was clearly the leader of the group, took a step closer to them. He was a tall man, in his early to mid-30s, with very shortly cut brownish gray hair. Hi there, the man said. Hi, Jack said a bit nervously. Hello, Mana said. Don't you two make a lovely couple out on a date? And you're bank robbers, Mana said. A statement, not a question. You must be a detective to make such a deduction. Jack then said, You're you're Leonard Snart, aren't you? I've seen your wanted posters on TV. Hopefully, it was the one that captured my better side. Now, you kids, just run along and we'll all go about our own business. Business, Snart said. You're taking money that doesn't belong to you. That's wrong, Mana said. So, so is threatening someone with a gun. But I'm not. But I'm about to. But I'm. Yeah. But I'm about a step away from doing that as well, Snart said. The unaltered, certain way with which the man threatened Mana, as if he were just making an offhanded remark, shook away whatever dread and tension the situation was producing in Jack and triggered his fight or flight instinct. He chose fight. Jack raised his left arm and the dual disc into view. Don't threaten her, Jack said coldly. Or what? Snart asked. You gonna hit me with that oversized wristwatch? Jack said nothing as he began to draw a card. Oh no, not playing cards. Are you gonna throw some dice at us after that? Not, not quite, Mana said. Then with a flash of pink light, her magical staff appeared in her right hand, ready to use. What the? One of Snart's men bellowed. The man then dropped his bag of money and reached to pull up his gun. He lifted it up and aimed it right at Mana. Jack saw his finger tightening over the trigger and knew he had less than a second before it was fired and Mana could possibly be gone from his life forever. He drew his card fully from the deck, completely failing to think to even look at the card before he played it in the spell and trap zone. Snart's man pulled the trigger of his gun, and a burst of 3 bullets fired. They did not find their target, and instead collided with a 4-foot by 3-foot stone shield. In a stroke of luck, the card Jack had played turned out to be Shield Wall. The spell card, which summoned 4 shield tokens, mindless monsters made of stone, which formed a protective barrier between Jack, Mana, and the robbers. Shocked and frightened, Snart and his 4 compatriots all brought up their guns and started to fire. Jack and Mana instantly ducked behind the shield tokens for better protection. They could feel the air from the bullets whizzing past them. They could hear the screeches of the ones ricocheting off the token monsters, each one causing a burst of adrenaline to release into their bodies. Mana and Jack looked at each other, formulate other formulating a plan. You take the 3 on the left, I'll get the 2 on the right, Jack shouted over the din of the firefight. Mana nodded at him and then peeked her head around the token to take a look. The 3 men on her side were all frantically shooting at the token monsters. Mana pointed her staff at them and then with her other hand flicked her wrist upwards, spun her pointer finger around in a circle twice, and then pointed down. A strong gust of wind came out of nowhere, picked the men up 8 feet off the ground, twirled them through 2 cycles, and forced them back to the street, knocking them out. Despite the danger, Jack couldn't help but smile at how easily she dispatched them. He then turned to his duel disk and drew 6 cards from his deck to see his options. The trap card, Fiendish Chain, was in his hand, which he guessed would work to bend Snart, and the other man. He was about to play it, but just before he could, one of Snart's bullets ricocheted in such a way that it sped past Mana, grazing her and making her fall to the ground unconscious, her head bleeding. Jack's eyes went wide. His heart beat faster, and he became utterly enraged. He took his hand off of Fiendish Chain and chose a spell card from his hand. He stood up from behind his shield token and played his card. I activate Dark Eruption. An explosion of red and black energy detonated several feet in front of Snart and his men. Snart and his man. The blast caused the entire street to rock and shake with a localized, short-lived earthquake. The force of the explosion knocked Jack down onto his back. When the street finally stopped shaking, Jack climbed to his knees and saw the damage his card had wrought. I think it's supposed to be had brought. Two of the shield tokens were nearly obliterated. There was a crater in the street at least 20 feet in diameter and 6 feet deep, and the front of the bank was non-existent. The robbers were all in view, but strewn all about the street, despite how they seemed to all be in one piece. Jack couldn't tell if they were alive or dead. Leonard Snart was nowhere to be seen. Jack looked to his left and saw Mana. She was still unconscious, but the shield token protecting her was still intact. Unable to process everything that had just happened at once, Jack simply deposited his used cards into the graveyard, bent down, lifted Mana up in his arms, and carried her off. He just heard the sound of approaching sirens as he ducked into an alley.
Pack your bags for the ultimate celebration of Black love.
This trip is all about creating lots of memories.
5 celebrity couples are escaping together.
This is my romantic.
To rethink their relationship.
We need to fight for this marriage.
And relinquish their hurt.
If the roles were reversed, would you hold me down?
Never think what day in my life.
I didn't know it was to that extent.
Can they reignite their love?
You want to be with her? I like you.
Couples Retreat, new series premieres Monday, April 19th, only on VH1. Pack your bags for the ultimate celebration of Black love.
This trip is all about creating lots of memories.
5 celebrity couples are escaping together.
This is my romantic.
To rethink their relationships.
We need to fight for this marriage.
And relinquish their hurt.
If the roles were reversed, would you hold me down?
Never think what day in my life.
I didn't know it was to that extent.
But can they reignite their love?
You want to be with her? I like you.
Couples Retreat, new series premieres Monday, March 29th, only on VH1. Doc?
Glowing skin. The efficacy of the vitamin C serum, the moisture of a cream, and an SPF 30. 3 products in one for bright glowing skin. New Garnier Brightness Serum Cream by Garnier Naturally.
Ready, set.
It was 2 hours later before Mana awakened. She found herself on the couch in the living room. She slowly lifted herself up into a sitting position. "Hey, take it easy," Jack half shouted. He rushed over to her from the kitchen, carrying the glass of water he'd been getting with him. "Take it easy," he said again. "You lost a bit of blood. I cleaned the wound and bandaged you up. The bullet didn't actually pierce you, but just to be safe, you should be probably use you should be probably use your healing magic on yourself." Okay, the there are some typos, but I can live with it. Mana nodded weakly as she sat back against the couch. "Mana, I am so sorry. I was so happy and thankful when you agreed to go out with me that I just wanted to show you the best night of your life. But then all this happened and you get hurt and Jack Jack tr- trailed off and looked away from her, overcome with emotions about the night's events. "Jack," she said softly. He did not move or say anything. "Jack, look at me," she said. Reluctantly, Jack turned his head back and made eye contact with her. "Nothing that happened tonight was your fault, especially not what happened at the bank. It was just bad luck," she said. "Still, I won't blame you if you say you never want to see me again." Mana smiled and gave a small laugh from the back of her throat. "You know, Jack." She then leaned forward and kissed him full on the mouth. The kiss was warm, soft, and released an explosion of fireworks in Jack's mind. To put any and every 4th of July show to shame, after 10 seconds, Mana broke the kiss and leaned back again. "You're cute when you're awkward." All Jack could do was smile. In that moment, he decided that as long as this woman would have him, there wasn't anything he could not or would not do to keep her safe and to make her happy. 2 years later, Barry Allen, in his suit and cowl of the flesh, super sped through the city, checking the locations of the interdimensional breaches which would allow the evil speedster Zoom to send one of his evil metas through to hurt Barry and his friends. After checking that none of them were at that time being used, something he was doing more and more frequently, Barry, Barry ran back to Star Labs into the building and stopped on a dime in the middle of the primary control room. Joe, is there anything new from the station house? Barry asked as he removed his cowl, cowl, cowl? Don't know how to say that. Nothing at all, Joe said. No reports of any meta activity since you captured Light, and definitely no reports of any speedsters running around town except you, Barry. I still don't like it, Barry said. Before I left Earth, too, I developed a serum to dampen Zoom's speed. All we would need is for Raymond to develop a weapon to deliver it, Harry said. Oh great, that could be this year's cold gun, Dr. Saddlin Snow joked. Maybe another criminal could get it and then we'd have Sergeant Slow. I would never let that happen. Sergeant Slow is a terrible name. Cisco joked back. Saddlin went on. Are you forgetting how much more powerful than Barry? Saddlin went on. Are we forgetting how much more powerful than Barry Zoom seems to be? If Barry can catch bullets, what's to say that Zoom can't catch whatever you shoot at them? Surprise, Harry answered. The element of surprise. All we would do is rig a projectile to fire when Zoom crosses into the breach. He can't stop what he can't see coming. That's great. Thanks, Barry said. Joe, what do you think? Saddlin asked. We need a plan. That's as good as any, assuming you can deliver. Don't underestimate me, Detective, Harry said. Why don't I make a run to Jitters? Iris asked. The whole group. Looks like it's gonna be a long day, and I'm sure we could all use the caffeine. That's a good idea, baby girl, Joe said. Barry, you want your usual? Iris asked. Yeah, cream with 37 sugars. I'll come along too. Help carry everything, offered Cisco. And you'll get to see Kendra, Saddlin said. Damn women. Why you got to out me like that? I had it covered. Cisco's joke triggered a small laugh from everyone, with the exception of Harry, Iris, and Cisco, then left the lab. Raymond, Harry said loudly as Cisco and Iris started to leave. When you get back, You need to look at your computers. They're lagging significantly in certain areas, and that is unacceptable. I can't help you people of I can't help you people if I'm forced to work with substandard equipment. Yeah, yeah, sure, Harry, Cisco said, through nearly gritting teeth. 30 minutes later, Cisco and Iris had everyone's coffee. Cisco had successfully flirted with Kendra Sanders some, and they were just about to start back when Iris suddenly stopped, looking across the popular coffee shop. Iris spotted several blonde hairs spiking up from the nest of brown. She recognized that hair. Hey, I know that guy over there, she said to Cisco, pointing at Jack out. We used to go to school together. Last time we saw each other was actually in here while Barry was still in the coma. He kinda had some kind of a nervous breakdown. Really? He looks alright to me, Cisco said. At that moment, they saw Jack turn his head to the left and started to speak, but to no one that they could see. Of course I don't know the guy, Cisco then added. Let's go say hi. I want to make sure he's alright. The two of them made their way over to the table where Jack was sitting. They saw him, noticed them coming halfway there, and the look of recognition on his face when he spotted Iris. As they approached, they observed the large dual disc on his left arm and just barely heard him say something to the air, which sounded like he was telling someone to be quiet for a minute. Jack stood up to greet them. Jack, hi, Iris said in her friendliest and most casual voice. It's been a while, Jack replied. Yeah, again, it's been, what, 2 years since we last saw each other? Yeah, pretty close to it. Oh, Jack Harper, this is my friend, Cisco Raymond. Jack held out his hand to shake, and Iris was suddenly surprised. The last time she'd seen Jack, he'd been so awkward and nervous talking to her that she'd thought he might run away on a moment's notice. She'd always thought his breakdown must have had something to do with his social awkwardness, but now she couldn't detect a trace of it. Jack was standing tall and straight, and the air surrounding him was filled with confidence. It seemed to her that something had happened to Jack, to make him become comfortable with himself. Hi, Cisco. Nice to meet you, Jack said as he shook. Yeah, you too. I gotta say, that's a nice dual disc you got on there. Thanks. You a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan? Are you kidding? I've seen every episode. I follow every. Cisco then trailed off for a split second as he seemed to remember something. Wait, that dual disc is one of those Konami prototypes, isn't it? You're not the Jack Harper, the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Champion, are you? In the flesh, Jack said with an easy smile. Oh my god, Iris, do you know who this guy is? He just won the World Championships for the 8th straight time in a row. That's a world record. He's the greatest player on Earth. Please, stop, man. You're embarrassing me. I'm no celebrity. I just know my way around a deck. Oh, I wish I had my Dark Magician card or my Millennium Puzzle with me so you could sign it, Cisco beamed. Jack gave a chuckle at that. Maybe next time. Iris then broke back in. So, Jack, are you doing alright? I mean, the last time we saw each other, you kinda had, well, an incident. You can say it, Iris. I had a small breakdown. Jack lied for their benefit. I had a lot going on at the time, and I had a bit of an episode, but I'm all good now. In fact, I've never seen. Wait, I've never been. Okay, I've never been better. Iris' spirits lifted at his news, and a smile spread across her face. Good. I'm really glad to hear that. It was at that moment that Mana returned from the restroom. She came right up to three of them, stood beside Jack, and put her arm around his waist. I'm back, sweetie, she said. Jack immediately bent down and placed a peck on her lips. After the kiss broke, Mana looked forwards to see Cisco and Iris. Oh, hello, she said to them. Yeah, honey, this is an old acquaintance of mine, Iris West, and this is her friend, Cisco Raymond. Iris, Cisco, this is my girlfriend, Mana. You have a girlfriend? That's great. Iris and enthused, unable to keep the motherly tone and satisfaction out of her voice. She then reached out and vigorously shook Mana's hand. It's nice to meet you, Mana. It's nice to meet you too, Mana replied, a bit surprised by Iris's forcefulness. Cisco, on the other hand, was nearly staring at Mana with a look of deep concentration on his face. Mana, you look really familiar to me. Have we met before? I'm pretty sure we haven't. I don't actually know a lot of people, Iris asked. So, how did you two meet? Jack and Mana shot a glare at each other and both gave a small smirk. That's really a long story, Jack said. Very complex and kinda out there, Mana included. So we have to get going. Where you guys off to? Cisco asked. Mana answered, We're spending the whole day together for our anniversary. Oh, an anniversary. That's great. How long have you guys been together? Iris asked. Our first date was 2 years ago today, Jack answered. Iris' face then fell a little as the memory of her own former boyfriend, Eddie Thwain, came into her mind. She tried to brighten her expression again a moment later. Well, I'm glad things are going so well for you, Jack. It was good to see you again. Yeah, you too, Jack said. Cisco, it was nice to meet you. Yeah, same here, Mana. It was a pleasure, Cisco said. He then asked, Are you really sure we haven't met before? I don't think so, Mana said. See you guys around, Jack said. With that, he and Mana moved past Iris and Cisco and walked out of Jitters. Iris had to go back to her job at Central City Picture News right after Jitters, leaving Cisco the man to man the coffees on his own, and after that he'd had to stop off at Big Belly Burger to get something for Dr. Light to eat. Back at the lab, Cisco was running a diagnostic and had started to go over the code for the software in the systems Harry had told him about, which Harry had gone into the infinitely into with infinitely more detail. As soon as Cisco had stepped in the doors, Cisco didn't think there was actually anything wrong with the computers. He was just doing it to shut Harry up. Raymond! Harry bellowed as he entered the primary control room. Have you found those bugs yet? Not yet. And frankly, Cisco was cut off as the computer beeped. Both he and Harry looked closely at the screen. I don't believe it. There's actually something here. Someone embedded a program into the computer code to keep the satellites from alerting us to something. It looks like the program is interfering with the new algorithms we installed pertaining to Earth 2 metas, and that's the reason for the lag, Cisco explained. Can you delete it? Sadalin asked. Better than that. I think I can undo it completely. With that, Cisco launched into a long string of typed commands, using all his knowledge of both coding and hacking to work on removing the program. Cisco didn't speak for nearly 5 full minutes. And that should be it, Cisco yelled as he hit the enter key. The program was removed from the mainframe and things started happening instantly. The primary screen changed its image to a map of the city with red location markers appearing in thousands of different places all over the map, and an urgently bouncing message box in the bottom corner reading "Unknown energy type detected." What is that? Unbelievable, Cisco said. I saw this over 2 years ago, and Dr. Wells convinced me it was a malfunction with the system. This is some kind of energy the satellite have been detecting since that day, but unable to tell us. It's been running freely all over the city since then. A metahuman, Sadalin said. He must have a very strange type of power for the computer not to be able to identify it. Something else to add to our list, Cisco said. Now I got to go give Light her burger. He grabbed the bag of fast food off the desk, stood up, and walked out of the room. Down in the pipeline prison, Cisco rounded the corner to Light's cell, walked halfway up the ramp, stopped and dropped the bag. Crap, he uttered quietly. He ran up the cell door and looked through the glass to find it completely empty. There was no sign of Dr. Light except for her clothes piled on the floor. Cisco then moved over to the control panel and tapped the screen, triggering the door to open. An invisible Dr. Light then rushed forwards out of the cell, knocked Cisco down, and made her way down the ramp to the hall beyond. Cisco was stunned and with surprise for half a second before jumping up to his feet and hitting the control panel to talk to the control room. Dr. Light has gone invisible. Lock the doors, he shouted into the camera. He turned and ran as fast as he could in pursuit of the fugitive. In the control room, Sadalin switched her chair to the middle station at the deck and assessed the security subroutines. After a moment, she reported, the doors aren't responding. None of the security protocols are responding. She's hacked the system, Harry added. Sadolin then called Barry over their comm system. Barry, Dr. Light's escaping. On the edge of the building, Cisco found an exterior door with its knob and a large section melted away. He scanned the parking lot and immediate area, but there was no one to see. Barry flashed in between him a moment later. "Where is she?" Barry asked. Cisco merely shook his head negatively as he walked back in. Dr. Light managed to hack into the lights of her cell, Cisco informed the team. The whole building runs on fiber optics that operate on pulses of light, so she turned off the dampeners and used her powers. "I told you how dangerous she was, and you should have listened to me and sedated her," Harry scolded the group. "I thought I had convinced her that helping us was the only way she'd free herself from Zoom," Barry said. "Well, you thought wrong." Joe then stepped in. "Okay, look, Dr. Light is gone, so instead of assigning blame, let's try and figure out what we're gonna do next." "Do you think she's gonna try and take Linda again?" Sadolin asked. "I had Iris bring Linda to the house, just in case, to keep an eye on her," Barry said. How are we going to... How, wait, how are we doing with the speed dampener?" "I think I've isolated the composite," Sadolin said, "and we're modifying the dart the arrow used to take down Wells." Cisco added, "He's not Wells, I'm Wells," Harry said, referring to the reverse flash. "Whatever," Harry said. "Oh, whatever, Harry. But we don't even really know if this thing works," Joe pointed out. Harry came back with, "Until we try it, no. This will be a field test, so can we end this scintillating staff meeting and get back to work?" "Or how about I say what everybody's thinking?" Joe asked. Maybe it's a good thing that Dr. Light is gone. Maybe it's the universe stopping us from doing something really stupid. No, Barry interjected. No, you guys keep going. I'm gonna figure out another way to get Zoom. I think there's something else we might have to, to deal with on top of everything else, Cisco announced. He walked around everyone to the computer station and brought up the map with the location markers again. We found this just before Light escaped. Light's turns out that our old buddy Thwayne installed a block in the computer to keep us from seeing something. All those markers on the screen are locations where some kind of energy the computer can't identify has been activated. A meta? Barry asked. Probably, Sadlin said. You know, I know we're probably not even close to knowing all the meta-humans out there, but one going on 2 years we know nothing about? Not the best feeling, Barry said. Huh, Joe grunted as he looked at the screen. What is it? I actually know some of these locations. Every now and then CCPD gets a strange call about shouts of violence and gunfire, but what's weird about them is when we get there, there are criminals. Incapacitated and waiting for us in odd ways. There was one time of a bunch of guys chained upside down hanging from a light pole, another where this mugger
Intuit TurboTax 5. Added sugar? No. Artificial flavors? Nope. Blender? Gosh, no. Simply smoothies. 100%
was buried
for a real homemade taste. The best things in
up to his chin in snow. He couldn't get out of. In July, there was even this one time I heard they got to this held up gas station. The robber was still there with a look on his face like he was hypnotized, waved his right to counsel, and signed a confession to armed robbery right on the spot, Joe explained. So then, it's someone who kinda acts like a hero but doesn't really go specifically looking to help people. Sadlin said. But What kind of powers could he possibly have? There's no common denominator to any of those occurrences. It almost seems like random chaos. Cisco moved and looked more closely at the screen. It looks like the greatest concentration of occurrences happens at that abandoned industrial park just outside of town, and an apartment building in the city with a recent one at Jitters. Did you see anything odd while you and Iris were there? Sadolin asked. Not really. We ran into an old classmate of hers, but there definitely weren't any chains, snowbanks, or hypnotized thieves, Cisco said. Look, people, Harry burst out. Our priority is Zoom. You guys can deal with this new thing after we stop him. Harry's got a point, guys. I'm gonna run and think. Maybe I'll take a look around some of those places while I'm out, Barry said. I'll go back to the station house, ask if maybe anybody knows anything more, Joe said. With that, the team broke, and everyone went to fulfill their various tasks.
I thought you just Franco. See, he takes after my side of the family.
As he had said, Barry went out for a super speed run to clear his head and think about things. His mind focused on several different things. He thought about Zoom, even though they had yet to even set eyes upon him. Zoom was already the toughest enemy they had faced. His sending criminal metahumans from Earth 2 was causing more problems than Barry could have thought. Dr. Light was only the latest and in the string of new and dangerous metas threatening the city. Barry thought about Iris. His feelings for her had not wavered and changed in the least since they had first developed. But things with her were more complicated than ever. In a way, Iris did know about his feelings. He had admitted them to her once, but after it had blown up in his face, Sadolin had helped him by making up a fake medical excuse to explain away his actions. Since then, between her grieving for Eddie Thwain and his own lack of courage to speak to her about his feelings again. Barry was less sure than ever he would one day be with her. When Barry came to a halt, even though he hadn't intended to go out, to, to go there, he found himself in the industrial park outside of the city where the energy occurrences had taken place. After debating it for a few moments, Barry decided he would look around and see if he could find anything about this new metahuman. At the at the start of his review of the area, the park seemed to be nothing more than what it was. The buildings were around 10 years old and were slightly run down. With the passage of time, with several of their windows broken. It wasn't until Barry saw the building on the far west side of the lot that he found something out of the ordinary. On the side of the building facing the forest was a large scorch mark on the ground. At the base of the building were deep gouges in the concrete resembling claw marks. Walking around, scanning the area at a normal pace, Barry found what seemed to be a large black reptile scale. Lifting the scale into his hands, he felt its razor-sharp edges and its nearly titanium-hard strength. Near to the scale he found a pure white feather, more than 3 feet in length. In regards to another possible new threat, Barry was more bewildered than ever as to what they might be dealing with.
Oh, did your boy get back from Afghanistan? Yeah, thanks for getting home. His mother and I are real grateful. Captain?
At the same time, in their penthouse, Jack and Mana were taking a break from their anniversary day out for the rest. Between lunch and dinner, they were watching a few episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX together in the living room, sunk into the couch, holding each other close. Over the 2 years since they had started dating, Jack and Mana had become completely inseparable, more than just a devoted couple. They were each other's best friend. They were so attached that Mana's card almost never left the dual disc anymore, allowing her and Jack to live together like an almost normal couple. As the episode they were watching ended, Jack got up from the couch after giving her a peck on the cheek. I'm gonna get us some drinks. He walked into the kitchen and pulled 2 glasses out of the cabinet to pour the both of them some juice. As he was pulling the juice carton out of the refrigerator, his Millennium Ring suddenly began to glow with the golden light of its magic. Jack had long become accustomed to the feel of the magic of the ring and learned how to consciously use it. But this was different. The feeling coursing through him was unlike any feeling he'd ever experienced previously from his powers. Before Jack could call out to Mana or do anything, his body froze in place. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. It almost seemed like he couldn't even think. Suddenly, it seemed like his mind was being ripped from his body, and he was floating above himself. Then, as if a hand were pulling him upwards, he was zooming out of the body uh, of the building, up through the sky, leaving the atmosphere. Jack's fear got the better of him, and he started to panic, futilely flailing his arms and trying anything else he could to try to get back to solid ground. And then suddenly, he was no longer on Earth, nor was he in space. He was crashing down a corridor of bright, multicolored lights streaking past him. He could see nothing but the tunnel surrounding him and a dim speck of darkness in the distance that he was moving closer and closer towards with every second. Jack emerged from the tunnel into the darkness and found that he was inside of a large, secluded-looking warehouse within the city. The interior of the building was nearly pitch black. The only lights in the room were coming from some kind of battle. There seemed to be many different duel monsters moving around the space. Jack could just see himself riding atop one of his dragons high over the fight, directing several other monsters he'd summoned. Mana was in her dark magician girl outfit, using her strongest offensive magic on the enemy combatants. Jack saw a huge ball of energy shoot up at his counterpart, hitting the dragon and causing his counterpart to topple off and fall to the ground. Jack saw himself fall through the air. Hurling towards a terrible injury and hit the ground hard. The enemy he was fighting then did something which caused a gale force wind to swirl around the room and incapacitate all of Jack's monsters. Jack's other self lied there on the ground, panting hard, trying with everything he had to get back to his feet. When he was halfway sitting up, a foot kicked him in the torso back down to the ground. The Jack observing the scene could only make out a smug, evil smile on the face of the man pushing himself down, and a vainglorious look of victory in his eyes as the man lifted his hand to deliver some kind of finishing blow. A blast of energy struck the man in the back, sending him flying away. Jack saw that a portal had appeared in the middle of the room, spilling out a huge blue and golden light, and several different new duel monsters. He could see the silhouettes of several different people coming through the portal. There was something strangely familiar about the emerging figures, something strong and oddly heartwarming to Jack. He could see his counterparts smiling widely at the figures. Then, just as suddenly as the vision had started, it was over. Jack awoke on the floor of his kitchen, seated against the bottom cabinet, his bottom wet from the juice carton that had dropped from his hand and spilled everywhere. Mana was kneeling down over him with a look of vast concern on her face. Beside her was a worried Karibo in spirit form. Jack, Jack, can you hear me? Her voice slowly faded back into his ears. Jack spread his arms over the countertops and leveraged himself up into a straighter sitting position. I can hear you, he said. What happened? I'm not sure. 1 second I was getting the juice, and then I couldn't move. Then I was in the middle of this battle. I think I had some kind of vision. It was almost like the visions through time created by the Millennium Necklace on the show. What? Mana asked. She was looking at him with a mixture of deep apprehension and disbelief. Mana, I think something's about to happen. 20 city blocks to the west.
That's what warriors are for.
20 city blocks to the west. About an hour later, Joe approached a cardboard cutout of himself. Ha! He chuckled as he turned the cutout around to face Cisco. Dude, How long you been sitting on this? Cisco, who's who was standing on an electric lift, turned around a cutout of himself in a funny pose he'd just hung to show off. It's important to have hobbies. Joe chuckled happily again and pointed to the Cisco cutout. From a corner to the left of everyone, Linda Park walked up to the team wearing the combat suit of her doppelganger Dr. Light. Barry had come up with an idea to have Linda impersonate Dr. Light in a scheme to draw zoom out for a confrontation. This is ridiculous, Linda complained as she stopped in front of Saddlin and Barry is his Flash costume. No, it's not, Barry said with an altered voice. You look just like Dr. Light. And with these gloves Cisco rigged up, you'll be able to do what she does, Sadlin said. Don't worry, they are totally safe, Iris said. Ish. Harry noted. Ish. Cisco said, well, come on, it's gotta be believable. So they really do fire and explode things. So you, Flash, are gonna have to let her hit you with those blasts once she gets the hang of it. Who exactly came up with this terrible idea? Joe asked the group at large. Okay, it is not a terrible idea. The suit can absorb the blasts, Cisco said. For real or ish? Iris asked. What does a terrible idea look like to you, Cisco? Joe asked. Cisco gripped the sides of his head in frustration. Okay, you know what I like to think. I can see the bright side of things, okay? Positively, people. With that, Flash, Saddlin, and Linda walked out into the large open area of the training room where there were many cutouts of the whole team set up as targets. Alright. So just hit the ones of me, okay? Flash said to Linda. Got it, Linda said as she took a step nearer the targets. Dr. Light. I am Dr. Light. She stuck out her left hand forward and fired a blast of light, but the force of the blast exiting the glove was so strong that it threw her aim off and additionally caused her to fire 3 more blasts in quick succession. The light induced killing strokes in the cutouts for Joe, Sadolin, and Cisco, and missed the Flash cardboard entirely. Flash caught her under the arms as she started to fall backwards. You know what? I'm just gonna adjust those a little, Cisco said. Okay. Cisco said to no one in particular. Okay, I hate to do this, but if I read exactly like how I am right now, it's going to take me until 11 o'clock to get through all of this. I didn't realize how long this was going to be. So what I'm going to do is just read fast. Cisco said to no one in particular and gestured to Joe. Screwdriver, coming. Cisco then ran off the monitoring platform. Harry stared at his back in silent, angry concentration. Okay, I'm not going to split this up, but because I want to do one chapter per video on Saturday. So I'm just gonna read in my head. And if you guys want to read it, it's right there.
Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper. Weird. Come on. Hey, pick her up.
So maybe just the cables?
We got it.
Welcome to America's #1 battery destination, AutoZone, your battery solution. Forget what you're smoking hot bottles and teachers say. Just remember my motto. If you ain't first, you're last. Gentlemen, are any of you armed, have, or wanted federal fugitives? No. Well, we're both. Which means... That's why I joined the army. Escape! Man up and get in there. That's the brightest. Appreciate it. What is the keys? You talking about keys? There's keys, man. I need keys. For what? This is a bad idea. This supposed to be out of the fight for. This is real time to go. Yeah, relax. Boss got the button. Recently, I'll tell myself. What is it?
control.
So basically what happened is that Jack canceled Hello? Hey.
I'm gonna be staying at Aunt Nikki's tonight, and I'll be home in the morning to get ready.
Okay,
Can you make sure the front door's locked?
I will.
Okay, don't forget.
I won't.
Okay, love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Lieutenant Force South to DCIS Major, do not shoot down here. Down. Scramble fire from the Force Center and there are federal agents on that plane.
Billy, I need to get the nose cam view up here on my monitor. Here it is.
Okay, so So they've just encountered the core. So Jack, now what are you gonna do? This has just become a shadow game. waiting for a Geki break.
Du Schwindler! Ach, du mit deiner Mörderei!
Good lord, this is long. I have to read faster. Shoot.
We're here to have some fun. All day next Saturday on Paramount Network. You like off-roading in nature, but you don't like getting stuck in nature. That's a conundrum. Psych! These tires have mud scooping and rock rolling technology. Go with the Coopers. Cooper! I haven't said psych in a while.
I'm thinking this whole war thing is off. So I'm trying to do more, less, more. Now, if only I can get into the hammock without spilling my premiere.
90 calories, 2.6 grams carbs. That's Corona Premier.
Out observing your safe driving abilities, play your cards right, and you could be in for a tasty discount. Let's roll. Hey, check it out. One time I tripped on the sidewalk over here. Who just gives away wood?
Snapchat progressive rewards you for driving safe and driving less.
Okay, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. We met Bakura, we met
I
Zoom,
came out of nowhere.
both at battles, and this has gotten more intriguing. So I'll see you all in Chapter 5. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let's hope Chapter 5 is not as long as Chapter 4. And, as always, I'm Hardcore Christopher. Keep it hardcore, everyone.
New this March on Discovery.